The young man, clad in a fiery red robe, possessed a handsome yet sinister face, and his deep-set eyes seemed to hold an infinite, mesmerizing power that he appeared out of thin air like a ghost, and with just one sentence. He caused the 3 Fire Peak disciples to change color, as if facing a formidable enemy. Who? Elder brother Hu Fei. One of the Fire Peak disciples looked distraught, realizing that it was indeed true that one shouldn't speak ill of others behind their backs. They had just been calling Hu Fei an ungrateful wretch, and now Hu Fei himself had appeared. The other 2 Fire Peak disciples also looked uneasy, lowering their heads and not daring to meet Hu Fei's gaze. Humph. Hu Fei snorted coldly, a chilling glint flashing in his deep eyes. And then he took a sudden step forward that in an instant. A vast surge of elemental energy swept out from Hu Fei's body, transforming midway into an overwhelming blaze that resembled a colossal flaming beast. Lunging towards the 3 Fire Peak disciples. Elder brother Hu Fei, spare us. No. The 3 Fire Peak disciples never imagined that Hu Fei would suddenly attack them, all because they had spoken a few truths and discussed him objectively behind his back, with despair on their faces. The 3 had no chance to escape before Hu Fei. In a flash, they were engulfed by the flames that had transformed into a giant beast, turning into ashes and completely vanishing from this world. Not far away, several Fire Peak disciples who happened to be passing by witnessed this scene, and their expressions all changed. Hu Fei immediately noticed these disciples, his brow furrowing slightly, and a chilling killing intent flashed in his eyes. Elder brother Hu Fei. Elder brother Hu Fei, we didn't see anything. The disciples hastily said, fearing that Hu Fei would silence them, swear an oath. Hu Fei's gaze was ruthless, his voice as cold as ice. Upon hearing this, the disciples immediately breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, they all pricked their fingers, and drops of fresh blood shot into the sky. Next, they each swore an oath, the content of which was simply that they would not spread what they had seen today, or they would suffer punishment. Immediately, a series of continuous thunderclaps echoed in the sky. It was the 9-9 Thunder Tribulation, the tribulation of oaths. Responding to their vows. Hu Fei was the personal disciple of the Fire Peak Master. Even if the Fire Peak Master knew he had killed someone on Fire Peak, he wouldn't truly do anything to him. But the problem was, Fire Peak was just one of the 5 peaks of the 5-element sect. Above the Fire Peak Master was an even higher-ranking Gold Peak Master, who was also the sect master of the 5-element sect. If today's events were only spread within Fire Peak, Hu Fei would be fine, but once it spread beyond, even his master, the Fire Peak Master, might find it difficult to protect him. The 5-element sect had a rule. Disciples of the 5-element sect were not allowed to wantonly cripple or kill fellow disciples. Otherwise, no matter who they were, they would be severely punished. Seeing that the disciples had all sworn an oath with the 9-9 Thunder Tribulation, Hu Fei grunted lowly, then vanished into the void. After Hu Fei left, the disciples took a deep breath and exchanged glances, all seeing relief in each other's eyes. They were relieved to be alive. Would peaked on the top-floor balcony of a 3-story building. 3 young men were gathered, chatting about something. So, Elder Yang crippled his own arm and left the sect for Ending City, which is a kind of silent escape. Shen Wei sighed. He was currently answering Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo's questions, after learning that Yang Ling was the 2nd strongest person on Wood Peak. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo were surprised and curious about Yang Ling's severed arm from Shen Wei's mouth. They got their answer. Yang Ling's severed arm was actually self-inflicted. The specific reason was his personal disciple, whom he had regarded as his own son, but who later betrayed him and defected to the Fire Peak Master, Hu Fei. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo's expressions were somewhat grim, although they had no direct relation to Yang Ling, nor did they speak of avenging him. Yet, after learning about the entanglement between Yang Ling and Hu Fei, an uncontrollable surge of immense anger rose from the depths of their hearts. Hu Fei's life was saved by Yang Ling. All his skills were taught by Yang Ling, but later, disliking the declining Wood Peak and unable to resist the Fire Peak Master's temptation, he betrayed his master who had nurtured him and betrayed would peak. During the 5-peak battle, if I encounter him, I will definitely teach him a good lesson. Huang Denyo fumed, clenching his fist. Throughout his life, he hated nothing more than ungrateful traitors. Although the matter between Hu Fei and Yang Ling had nothing to do with him, Hu Fei's actions made him very displeased. Even disgusted, in his own words. Brother Nyo just doesn't like you. Just wants to beat you up. What's it to ya? Although Duan Ling Tian said nothing, the coldness in his eyes undoubtedly showed that his thoughts at this moment were similar to Huang Denyo's. Hu Fei had also crossed his bottom line. Denyo, don't underestimate Hu Fei. It is said that he is already at the Void Transformation Stage 6th level and has comprehended 7th level mid-grade fire concept. It is precisely because of his exceptional talent that the Fire Peak Master spared no effort to poach him from Elder Yang. Shun, Wei said with a serious expression, if it weren't for the great price the Fire Peak Master paid, would Hu Fei, who had been with Elder Yang since childhood, have betrayed Elder Yang? If he dares not to use a spirit weapon and dares to fight me on the ground, I am not afraid of him. Huang Denyo snorted. Although he was only at the Void Transformation, stage 5th level, and had only comprehended 5th level mid-grade concept, what he had comprehended was the Earth concept. Once unleashed on the ground, he could harness the power of the Earth, comparable to 30 ancient horned dragons, with full power. It would be comparable to the strength of 160 ancient horned dragons. If Hu Fei also didn't use a spirit weapon and unleashed all his abilities, his total power would only be comparable to the strength of 160 ancient horned dragons. That's why Huang Denyo said that. However, although Huang Denyo said that, he didn't think so in his heart. This could be seen from the apprehension in his eyes. The 5-peak battle is about to begin. I should go back and cultivate. During this time, you two should also cultivate diligently. Although your strengths are not bad, there are many young disciples in the other 4 peaks who are much stronger than me. Shen Wei said to Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo with a solemn expression. The two nodded. After Shen Wei left, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo parted ways, each returning to their own rooms to cultivate. After returning to his room, Duan Ling Tian sat cross-legged on the bed. He held a wind concept fragment in one hand and a lightning concept fragment in the other. He cultivated while comprehending 2 completely different concepts. The 9 Dragons War Sovereign Art, Sword Dragon Transformation. If those Void Transformation Stage 9th level powerhouses knew that Duan Ling Tian could simultaneously comprehend 2 different concepts with 2 different concept fragments, they would probably be so jealous they'd vomit blood. What Void Transformation Stage 9th level powerhouses pursued was not comprehending 1 concept to 9th level high grade, but comprehending 2 concepts to 9th level high grade only. Then could they be considered to have touched the threshold of the Martial Emperor stage. Otherwise, they would never be able to step into the Martial Emperor stage and become Martial Emperor powerhouses in their entire lives. And Duan Ling Tian's current situation was what every Void Transformation Stage 9th level powerhouse dreamed of, simultaneously comprehending 2 different concepts. This also meant that Duan Ling Tian could step halfway into the Martial Emperor stage in the shortest amount of time. Compared to ordinary martial artists, Duan Ling Tian's path to breaking through to the Martial Emperor stage was much easier, with the same comprehension and the same conditions. In the time it would take a Void Transformation Stage 9th level powerhouse to comprehend 2 9th level high-grade concepts, Duan Ling Tian could comprehend 4 9th level high-grade concepts on Cloud Continent. Void Transformation Stage 9th level powerhouses who simultaneously comprehended 4 9th level high-grade concepts were almost 100% able to break through to the Martial Emperor stage and become powerful Martial Emperor powerhouses. Time quietly flowed by. The potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill continuously converged with the elemental energy within Duan Ling Tian's body, circulating according to the Sword Dragon Transformation mental cultivation method of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Art, aiding the rapid increase of his elemental energy. After an unknown period, The bottleneck from the void transformation stage 5th level to the void transformation stage 6th level appeared, filling Duan Ling Tian with immense joy. The appearance of this bottleneck also meant that he was one step closer to the void transformation stage 6th level. He was very much looking forward to the void transformation stage 6th level because he urgently wanted to verify something. He wanted to know if, after his cultivation broke through to the void transformation stage 6th level, his spiritual energy would also rise to the void transformation stage 7th level, or if it would remain stagnant, synchronized with his cultivation. If it's the latter, the after effect left on me after the demon sealing tablet's power caused me to demonize last time would truly be too exaggerated. Now, Duan Ling Tian, although he had prepared for the worst, was still somewhat anxious. He hoped his spiritual energy would also increase. Otherwise, the effectiveness of his soul skill, thousand illusions, would be greatly reduced, perhaps even rendered useless. Duan Ling Tian. As Duan Ling Tian continued to cultivate, he felt as if not much time had passed before someone called him from outside. The voice was old and familiar. When Duan Ling Tian stopped cultivating, opened his eyes, and regained his senses, he recognized who was calling him from outside. Elder Yang. Duan Ling Tian opened his door, smiling as he looked at the one-armed old man standing outside. The second strongest person on Wood Peak, Yang Ling's face held a faint smile. Appearing kind and benevolent, is the 5-peak battle about to begin? Seeing Yang Ling arrive, Duan Ling Tian's heart tightened as he secretly speculated. Immediately after, Duan Ling Tian realized he had overthought. Duan Ling Tian. This grand mist fruit is for you from the Peak Master. With your talent, you should be able to absorb its medicinal power and advance your cultivation further before the 5-peak battle begins. Yang Ling spoke as he took out a spirit fruit. The spirit fruit in Yang Ling's hand was purplish-black, surrounded by faint wisps of light, and exuded a refreshing aroma. The scent, following Duan Ling Tian's nose, entered his body, causing the Yuan Li in his meridians to stir. Even the medicinal power of the Nirvana pill became agitated, as if a certain resonance had been created, yet it wasn't a repulsion, although the domineering, medicinal power of the Nirvana pill repelled the heaven and earth spiritual energy permeating the world, and the heaven and earth spiritual energy accumulated in the Yuan Li. It did not repel the medicinal power of the spirit fruit. The Nirvana pill, though not a spirit fruit, achieved the same result through different means and could be considered family. Since they were family, how could there be repulsion? Hanyuan fruit. Taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian, having recovered his senses, couldn't help but reveal a look of pleasant surprise. The Hanyuan fruit, a spirit fruit specifically for void-prying stage martial artists, ranked medium to high in terms of medicinal power among the many spirit fruits for void-prying stage martial artists, and was extremely rare. Through the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duan Ling Tian easily learned the details of the Hanyuan fruit. The Hanyuan fruit, even if consumed by a martial artist who has just broken through to void-prying stage 5th level, as long as they can fully absorb its medicinal power, they can completely break through to void-prying stage 6th level in a short period of time. Duan Ling Tian's eyes lit up, his heart surging with excitement. I am now only one step away from void-prying stage 6th level. The medicinal power of the Hanyuan fruit can easily help me break through. And even with the domineering medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, it's highly possible that a bottleneck leading to void-prying stage 7th level will appear in my body, directly spanning 2 levels, from the peak of void-prying stage 5th level to void-prying stage 7th level. Duan Ling Tian hadn't not thought about it, but he felt it was unrealistic. Between void-prying stage 6th level and void-prying stage 7th level was a watershed, a chasm of difference that a martial artist who had just broken through to void-prying stage 6th level, even if they consumed a Hanyuan fruit and fully digested its medicinal power, could not possibly break through to void-prying stage 7th level in one go, at most reaching the peak of void-prying stage 6th level. Otherwise, why would it be called a watershed? Therefore, even with the aid of the domineering medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, Duan Ling Tian didn't think he could break through to void prying stage 7th level in one go after consuming the Honyuan fruit, because it was simply too difficult. Perhaps heaven favors our wood peak. The peak master went out some time ago and just happened to encounter these Honyuan fruits. And there were two of them. Yang Ling smiled. Originally, he was going to give them to Shun Wei and Luo Chun. But Yuan Danyo's appearance made him change his mind. 2. Duan Ling Tian was greatly surprised upon hearing this. Point 1 must know that for a high-grade spirit fruit, like the Honyuan fruit, it was already extremely lucky for a person to encounter one in their lifetime. Yet the Wood Peak Master had encountered two at once. This luck was simply defying the heavens. Even the Rebirth Martial Emperor, having lived through 2 lives, only encountered one Honyuan fruit in his first life, and that was at a large auction. The rarity of the Honyuan fruit was evident. Cultivate well. The hope of our Wood Peak in this 5 Peaks battle rests entirely on you and Danyo. Yang Ling handed the Honyuan fruit to Duan Ling Tian and said with a solemn expression, "Elder Yang, rest assured, I will do my best." Duan Ling Tian responded to Yang Ling while looking at the spirit fruit in his hand with a happy expression. I'm going to find Danyo. You continue cultivating." Yang Ling nodded, then left the top floor of the 3-story building and went to the lowest floor to find Huang Danyo. After Yang Ling left, Duan Ling Tian didn't hesitate. He immediately closed the door and returned to his bed to sit cross-legged. With this Honyuan fruit, I can completely break through to void prying stage 6th level in a short period of time. By then, I will be able to further verify the specific condition of my mental strength. Suppressing his extremely excited emotions, Duan Ling Tian opened his mouth and swallowed the entire Honyuan fruit in just a few bites that in an instant. A liquid that alternated between hot and cold flowed down his throat, entered his body, and integrated into the various large and small meridians throughout his body. The Yuan Li in Duan Ling Tian's body seemed to sense something, stirring and intertwining with the domineering medicinal power of the Nirvana pill before meeting this hot and cold liquid. Boom, 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 in the various meridians throughout Duan Ling Tian's body. The Yuan Li and the medicinal power of the Nirvana pill finally collided with the medicinal power of the Honyuan fruit. Upon impact, the two completely merged into one at the same time. Under the combined stimulation of the Nirvana pill and Honyuan fruit, the Yuan Li seemed to transform into a wild horse, charging recklessly through Duan Ling Tian's meridians. Before Duan Ling Tian could react, his meridians were almost torn apart, and his internal organs also suffered some damage. Blood surged up, forcing him to spit out a mouthful of clotted blood. 9 Dragon War Sovereign Technique. Sword Dragon Transformation. Duan Ling Tian dared not hesitate. He hurriedly circulated his cultivation method, gradually controlling the Yuan Li in his body that was like a wild horse, guiding it onto the right track. Duan Ling Tian didn't know how much time had passed when all the Yuan Li was on the right track. That it felt like only an instant, yet also like a whole day had passed. Whoosh. The domineering medicinal power propelled the Yuan Li to surge out, like wave after wave of terrifying tsunamis, rushing towards the bottleneck leading to void prying stage 6th level with formidable momentum. Boom. A soft sound echoed within Duan Ling Tian's body. The vast Yuan Li, like a force that could destroy anything in its path, broke through the bottleneck leading to void prying stage 6th level and continued to surge out. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian only felt that the Yuan Li in his body had undergone a qualitative change, as if it had been reborn. Void prying stage 6th level. Duan Ling Tian knew that he had broken through, successfully reaching void prying stage 6th level. The increase in his cultivation gave him unprecedented power, mental strength. Knowing that he had broken through, Duan Ling Tian's thoughts turned to his mental strength, while continuing to circulate Yuan Li according to the Sword Dragon Transformation cultivation method of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign Technique. He observed his mental strength, wanting to know if it had improved. Soon, Duan Ling Tian finally detected the condition of his mental strength. Even at this moment, he could clearly sense the transformation of his mental strength. A rebirth-like transformation similar to his Yuan Li. increasing by a full level, mental strength. Void prying stage, 7th level. After detecting the level of his mental strength after its transformation, Duan Ling Tian's heart was incomparably excited at this moment. He felt as if he possessed the entire world. Excitement and satisfaction surged from his soul, instantly spreading throughout his entire body. He broke through. He finally broke through. The sequelae that the demon's sealing tablet brought him last time had merely compressed the two-level gap between his cultivation and mental strength into a one-level gap. His cultivation was at void prying stage 6th level. His mental strength was one level higher, at void prying stage 7th level. Duan Ling Tian was very excited, truly very excited. This feeling of regaining what was lost made him want to open his throat and shout, "Awesome!" The Yuan Li in Duan Ling Tian's body, driven by the dual medicinal powers of the Nirvana pill and Hanyuan fruit, continued to move rapidly, circulating according to the cultivation method of this sword dragon transformation, the 7th transformation of the 9-dragon war sovereign technique. His cultivation was still continuously improving that on the lowest floor of the 3-story building where Duan Ling Tian was. Huang Denyo, who was also sitting cross-legged in his room cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes. I broke through. Void prying stage 6th level. Huang Denyo's face showed ecstatic joy. His fists clenched, and as Yuan Li surged, the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head condensed into shape a total of 80 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Winding down, lifelike, there's still a large portion of the medicinal power left. If I can break through to void prying stage 7th level in one go, even if I use all my spirit weapons and am not on the ground, I won't fear that Hu Fei. By then, I must get revenge for Elder Yang. Huang Denyo took a deep breath, closed his eyes again, and continued to cultivate, rapidly digesting the medicinal power of the Hanyuan fruit that was driving the circulation of Yuan Li in his body. Golden Peak.it was the first peak of the 5 Elements sect and the main peak personally controlled by the sect master of the 5 Elements sect. Since the establishment of the 5 Elements sect, it had been the absolute overlord among the 5 peaks of the 5 Elements sect. Of course, the Golden Peak was strong not only because it was filled with powerful individuals, and the sect master of the 5 Elements sect was among them. It was mainly because the inheritance of the younger generation of Golden Peak was the most outstanding among all the peaks of the entire 5 Elements sect. On a vast platform on the mountainside of Golden Peak, people were bustling. Many Golden Peak disciples were sparring with each other, fighting fiercely, creating a lively scene. This was the challenge arena of Golden Peak. As long as they were Golden Peak disciples, they would come here to improve themselves through actual combat in their spare time from cultivation. Suddenly, 2 figures arrived from afar, like 2 flashes of lightning, appearing in the sky above the vast platform in an instant. Standing in midair, these were 2 young men, approximately 30 years old, with handsome features and elegant demeanors. The most striking thing was, the 2 men looked exactly alike. If it weren't for their different attire and clothes, no one would have been able to recognize them at first glance. The young man in blue stood there, expressionless, his gaze cold and devoid of light. The young man in red stood there, looking at the lively scene on the vast platform with interest, and smiled slightly. Second brother, look. The martial spirit of our Golden Peak is still as strong as ever, far beyond what the other 4 peaks can compare to. Unlike the cheerful and active red-clothed youth, the blue-clothed youth's expression remained unchanged, and he let out a cool humph. It was as if he was saying to the red-clothed youth, "I am your elder brother." Seeing the blue-clothed youth's demeanor, the red-clothed youth naturally guessed his thoughts and didn't mind, or rather, he had long been accustomed to it. Since they were old enough to understand, they had never truly settled who was older. He refused to accept him as the elder brother, and he also refused to accept him as the elder brother. In both of their hearts, they believed themselves to be the true elder brother. It's senior brother Chun and senior brother E. On the vast platform, someone exclaimed. Instantly, all the Golden Peak disciples on the platform, including those who were sparring, stopped what they were doing and looked up at the 2 young men in the sky. At this moment, in their eyes. There was a faint trace of genuine respect. This pair of twin brothers before them were the two strongest among the younger generation of Golden Peak, and also the direct disciples of the Golden Peak Master, who was also the sect leader of the Five Elements sect. Senior Brother Chun, Senior Brother E, Senior Brother E, Senior Brother Chun. The Golden Peak disciples present respectfully greeted the two young men in unison. The red-clothed young man, referred to as Senior Brother E, smiled and waved at everyone, appearing outgoing and amiable. As for the blue-clothed young man, referred to as Senior Brother Chun, he stood there expressionless, oblivious to his surroundings, introverted and cold. However, the group of Golden Peak disciples showed no dissatisfaction, as if they were accustomed to it. Whoosh! Suddenly, the blue-clothed young man moved, disappearing from the sight of the Golden Peak disciples. The red-clothed young man raised an eyebrow, smiled at the Golden Peak disciples, and chased after him. Second brother, I heard that two young powerhouses came to Wood Peak a few days ago. Have you heard about it? The blue-clothed young man did not respond, but his calm eyes undoubtedly conveyed the answer to the red-clothed young man. I also heard. Elder He Gang of Wood Peak was forced to cripple his own cultivation by those two young powerhouses. The red-clothed young man added. The blue-clothed young man still showed no reaction, his face expressionless, as if everyone in the world owed him money. However, the red-clothed young man did not find it boring or shut up. He continued to talk to the blue-clothed young man, performing a solo act, without any trace of impatience. Time slipped away quietly. The date for the start of the Five Peaks battle was drawing nearer. The Five Peaks battle was a tradition of the Five Elements sect, held once every 3 years, and only disciples of the younger generation from each peak were eligible to participate. Finally, based on the performance of the disciples from each peak, the specific ranking of each peak would be determined. The higher the ranking, the more cultivation resources, such as origin stones and medicinal pills, they would receive over the next 3 years. The lower the ranking, the fewer cultivation resources they would receive. Under this cycle of positive and negative feedback, the gap between the 5 peaks of the 5 Elements sect became clearly defined, and Wood Peak, which had been at the bottom for 20 years, had been in decline ever since. For Wood Peak to rise again, the first step was to break free from its destiny of being at the bottom, and then gradually reclaim its former glory. In the past, including the people from Wood Peak, before the 5 Peaks battle began, the outcome was already clear. Wood Peak was destined to be at the bottom, but this time, the addition of 2 young powerhouses to Wood Peak introduced many unstable factors. Therefore, during this period, the attention of the other 4 peaks was entirely focused on Wood Peak. They were all curious. Could these 2 young powerhouses, who had just joined Wood Peak, truly turn the tide for Wood Peak? Wood Peak, Creek. The door to the top-floor room of the 3-story pavilion opened. A young man in purple robes walked out, came to the balcony of the pavilion, squinted his eyes at the boundless blue sky and white clouds ahead, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I still underestimated the potency of the Nirvana pill. Recalling his recent experience, a hint of excitement flickered in Duan Ling Tian's eyes. However, the potency of the Nirvana pill is indeed astonishing. After consuming it for so long, only a tiny bit was used. The remaining potency is enough to help me break through to the Martial Emperor realm. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. It's just a pity that my current cultivation is too low. The speed at which the Nirvana pill's potency is consumed is even far less than that of those spirit fruits. Duan Ling Tian sighed. Although his cultivation speed, aided by the potency of the Nirvana pill, had been continuously and rapidly improving, due to the limitations of his cultivation, the speed of improvement was not as fast as after consuming spirit fruits. For example, the primordial fruit he had recently consumed was completely depleted within a few days under the powerful impetus of the Nirvana pill's potency. Not only that, even a considerable amount of the Nirvana pill's potency was consumed, drawn out by the primordial fruit's potency, with my ultimate talent plus the potency of the Nirvana pill. If others don't consume many spirit fruits, it's impossible for them to catch up to me. Of course, Duan Ling Tian also knew that this idea was unrealistic. Perhaps it's time to find a way to get more various spirit fruits to aid my cultivation. That way, not only will the potency of the spirit fruits help me quickly improve my cultivation, but even the potency of the nirvana pill will be drawn out and consumed more by the spirit fruit's potency. As long as I have a large supply of spirit fruits to consume, who in Cloud Continent could cultivate faster than me? Duan Ling Tian believed that as long as he could acquire more spirit fruits, coupled with the potency of the nirvana pill within him, he could completely leave behind the young powerhouses from the outer realm who grew up consuming spirit fruits. This time, after coming out of the secret treasure left by that martial emperor and reuniting with Tian Wu and the others, I should properly plan my future path. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself, I want to break through to the void transformation realm in the shortest possible time. Then, I'll get a rough map of Cloud Continent, confirm the location of Northern Desert, and then find the place where the great treasure left by the reincarnation Martial Emperor is located. Brother Duan. Suddenly, a voice reached Duan Ling Tian's ears, causing him to snap back to reality instantly. Unbeknownst to him, Yi Xian had come to Duan Ling Tian's side. Duan Ling Tian looked over, his spiritual energy instinctively extending outwards, and he immediately noticed the changes in Yi Xian. Xiao Xianyu broke through to the 9th level of the nascent soul realm. Duan Ling Tian was somewhat surprised. Just about a month ago, Yi Xian had just broken through to the 8th level of the nascent soul realm, and now, she had actually broken through again. Yi Xian giggled, then said, Brother Duan, my rapid breakthrough is all thanks to you. If you hadn't helped me cleanse my meridians and marrow, I wouldn't have such talent. I did help you improve your talent, but I didn't expect your progress to be so great. Duan Ling Tian sighed. Brother Duan, I saw you staring into the distance just now. What were you thinking about? Yi Xian asked curiously. Nothing. Duan Ling Tian shook his head gently, then looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Xiao Xian, at your current cultivation speed, at most 3 months, you should be able to break through to the void prying realm. Warriors on Cloud Continent were only considered true warriors once they entered the void realm. Upon entering the void realm, one could fly through the air and roam the skies. My goal is to break through within 2 months. Yi Xian was full of confidence, then added, Brother Duan, I'm going back to cultivate. As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Xian left in a hurry. This girl, she's really in a rush. Duan Ling Tian smiled wryly. The 5 Peaks battle should be starting soon, right? Coming back to his senses, Duan Ling Tian muttered to himself that he knew that after the 5 Peaks battle, he would definitely become a young representative of the 5 Element sect, heading to this secret treasure left by the Martial Emperor to retrieve the items the 5 Element sect needed. The 5 Element sect was, after all, one of the 3 major forces in the region east of the Northern Desert. What could catch its eye were only spirit artifacts of the 2nd grade and above, as well as those realm fragments of the 7th level and above, and the incomparably precious profundity fragments, since that secret treasure was left by a Martial Emperor powerhouse, barring any accidents. There should be no shortage of these items. After coming out of the secret treasure left by that Martial Emperor powerhouse and reuniting with Tian Wu and the others, I will leave Wood Peak and the 5 Element sect. This time in the 5 Peaks battle, no matter what, I will do my utmost to secure the greatest benefits for Wood Peak. Thus, it will also be considered repaying the favor of the Wood Peak Master's primordial fruit. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself to in the following days. Duan Ling Tian continued to cultivate, and at the same time, diligently comprehended the wind profundity and lightning profundity, with the latter even making some breakthroughs. The 5 Peaks battle, as expected by the disciples of the 5 Element sect, arrived as scheduled. The 5 Peaks battle had no specific venue. It was held directly in the void outside the tallest golden peak of the 5 Element sect, a place where disciples from all peaks could freely exert themselves. Early in the morning, the entire void outside Golden Peak was filled with people, a vast and mighty crowd. When Duan Ling Tian, Huang Denyo, and Shunwei arrived, they were also startled by the scene before them. The void was filled with dense crowds as far as the eye could see. It's Shunwei of Wood Peak. Soon, Some disciples from other peaks recognized Shinwei. Shinwei had always been one of the most outstanding disciples among the younger generation of Wood Peak, and many people knew him. The purple-clothed young man and the tall young man next to Shinwei seemed somewhat unfamiliar. Many people noticed Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo beside Shinwei. Are those two? Perhaps Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo? Someone exclaimed, causing the group of 5-element sect disciples in the sky to turn their heads, their gazes falling one by one on Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo. Instantly, the two became the focus of everyone's attention. Are they the two young powerhouses that Wood Peak recently took in? It's said that when they first arrived at Wood Peak, they killed Luo Chun of Wood Peak and even forced Luo Chen's master, He Gang, to cripple his own cultivation. He Gang is a well-ranked elder of Wood Peak, with a cultivation of Void Transformation Realm's 6th level. To give these two an explanation and to keep them at Wood Peak, he was willing to sacrifice his own cultivation. From this, it can be seen that Elder He Gang has great confidence in their strength. I'd like to see if Wood Peak can change its bottom-ranked destiny in today's 5 Peaks battle. The 5-element sect disciples present stared intently at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo, discussing animatedly. Duan Ling Tian had long been accustomed to being the center of attention, so he didn't particularly care, but it was different for Huang Denyo. When had he ever seen such a scene? For a moment, his brows couldn't help but furrow. It wasn't until Duan Ling Tian and the other two moved aside that the sudden arrival of another person caused everyone's gaze to shift. Hu Fei. It's Hu Fei. Hu Fei, the personal disciple of the Fire Peak Master. A young man dressed in a fiery red robe soared through the air from afar. Alone and incredibly arrogant, without any visible movement, his fiery red robe billowed, like a rapidly streaking inferno, and in an instant, he arrived at an unoccupied space to the side. Immediately after, Hu Fei, standing in midair, began to close his eyes and rest. This moment, he seemed completely oblivious to the gazes fixed upon him, standing there self-absorbed, deaf to everything around him. Is that Hu Fei? Huang Denyo's face darkened, and he glared at the young man and read in the distance with a fierce glint in his eyes, his yuan li surging within him as he abruptly stepped forward, ready to go and beat him up. Denyo, Shinwei, with his sharp eyes, stopped Huang Denyo and said with a wary expression, I just received news 2 days ago. This Hu Fei has already broken through to the 7th level of the Void Prying Stage. 7th level of the Void Prying Stage. These 5 short words made Huang Denyo's face change, and his legs felt as if they were filled with lead, unable to move an inch. Although he had broken through to the 6th level of the Void Prying Stage, he still had no confidence in fighting a 7th level Void Prying Stage martial artist. Between the 6th level of the Void Prying Stage and the 7th level of the Void Prying Stage, although there was only 1 level difference, the gap between them was like a chasm. Because there was an insurmountable watershed between the two, the difference between them was a full 20 ancient horned dragons worth of strength. This was still under the premise that neither had used spirit weapons, once both sides used spirit weapons. A 7th level Void Prying Stage existence would not only have 20 more ancient horned dragons worth of strength than a 6th level Void Prying Stage existence, but over 30 more ancient horned dragons worth of strength. Denyo, do you really want to beat him up? Duan Ling Tian, who had been standing quietly to the side, a cold light flashing in his eyes, then asked Huang Denyo. Of course, Huang Denyo nodded without any hesitation. For such an ungrateful, white-eyed wolf, he wished he could rush forward and give the other party 2 slaps to teach him a lesson. Then come with me. Duan Ling Tian smiled, stepped into the air, and headed straight for the Hu Fei, who was currently resting with his eyes closed. Duan Ling Tian. Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words and seeing him fly out, exuding incredibly powerful confidence, Shinwei, who had just reacted, was stunned that he didn't know where Duan Ling Tian got his confidence. According to what he knew about Duan Ling Tian, when he faced the 7th level Void Prying Stage bandit leader, Duan Ling Tian seemed to have no solution. That time, his innate ability was clearly ineffective against a 7th level Void Prying Stage martial artist. But now, knowing that Hu Fei was a 7th level Void Prying Stage martial artist, Duan Ling Tian still rushed forward, exuding strong confidence from head to toe. Did he break through? Shen Wei's pupils constricted, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Good. After hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Huang Dinyo was first stunned, then hurriedly followed that he knew that Duan Ling Tian had consumed the Honyuan fruit. In his opinion, since he had broken through, Duan Ling Tian must have broken through as well. It seems there's a good show to watch today. Seeing Duan Ling Tian and Hu Fei fly away, Shen Wei smiled slightly and followed. Yang Ling was his martial uncle in the past. Hu Fei could be considered his senior brother. However, from the moment Hu Fei betrayed his martial uncle and defected to the Fire Peak Master, he no longer regarded Hu Fei as his senior brother. In fact, he had wished countless times that he could possess strength superior to Hu Fei's. That if he did, he could avenge his martial uncle and properly teach this ungrateful white-eyed wolf a lesson. And now, with someone who could help him achieve this dream, he felt joy from the bottom of his heart. Duan Ling Tian and the two others flew towards Hu Fei, and in a moment, they were suspended in the air not far in front of Hu Fei, only 100 meters away from him. Their actions naturally attracted the attention of the others. What do they want to do? 10 years ago, Hu Fei betrayed the Wood Peak and defected to the Fire Peak. Are these three, Duan Ling Tian, planning to clean house for the Wood Peak? It's possible. It's just, are they a match for Hu Fei? As far as I know, Hu Fei broke through to this 7th level of the Void Prying stage a few days ago. Many people discussed animatedly, and some even revealed the shocking news that Hu Fei had already broken through to this 7th level of the Void Prying stage. For a time, the scene was in an uproar. What? Hu Fei broke through to the 7th level of the Void Prying stage? No way. He broke through again so quickly. No wonder the Fire Peak Master spared no expense to poach him to the Fire Peak 10 years ago. It turns out his talent is so strong. 7th level of the Void Prying stage. Doesn't that mean his strength can be compared to the Nangong brothers of the Metal Peak? The Nangong brothers are only at the 7th level of the Void Prying stage. A group of 5-element sect disciples discussed, their faces filled with shock. Hu Fei had actually broken through to the 7th level of the Void Prying stage. This was astonishing news. One must know that, in the past, among the contemporary young generation of the 5-element sect, only the Nangong brothers from the Metal Peak had broken through to the 7th level of the Void Prying stage. Now, a third person had appeared. Hu Fei, the personal disciple of the Fire Peak Master, perhaps hearing the discussions around him about Wood Peak. Hu Fei, who had been resting with his eyes closed, finally slowly opened them. His calm gaze immediately locked onto Duan Ling Tian and the two others 100 meters away. Junior brother Shen Wei. Hu Fei's gaze swept over Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo before settling on Shen Wei, and he spoke a faint greeting. However, in response to Hu Fei's initiative greeting, Shen Wei merely scoffed, sarcastically saying, I wouldn't dare to be the junior brother of you, the personal disciple of the Fire Peak Master, lest others say I'm trying to climb the social ladder. Shen Wei's words were clearly a taunt about Hu Fei's betrayal of Yang Ling and the Wood Peak. Hearing Shen Wei's sarcasm, Hu Fei's face darkened, and his tone became several shades colder. Junior brother Shen Wei, I truly don't know where you get the courage to speak to me like that. Haha, worthy of being the personal disciple of the Fire Peak Master. What a grand air. Shen Wei continued to mock, not to mention that he now believed Duan Ling Tian could deal with Hu Fei. Even if Duan Ling Tian couldn't, he would still instinctively curse out loud when facing Hu Fei directly. All of this was simply because he despised Hu Fei. This white-eyed wolf, from the bottom of his heart, seeing Shen Wei daring to push his luck. Two chilling lights burst from Hu Fei's eyes, and his voice was low and cold. Junior brother Shen Wei, you wouldn't think that these two wastes beside you can stop me, would you? Wastes. Huang Dinyo's face changed dramatically. That he never expected that Hu Fei would call him and Duan Ling Tian wastes. As soon as he opened his mouth. One must know that before this, he and the other party had no interaction whatsoever. In an instant, Huang Dinyo's heart filled with rage, and his eyes flashed with a terrifying cold light. Stop you! Just as the gazes of the 5-element sect disciples present fell on Duan Ling Tian and the two others, Duan Ling Tian took a step forward, looking at Hu Fei with an indifferent gaze. Are you worthy? Duan Ling Tian said faintly. Are you worthy? Duan Ling Tian's voice wasn't loud, but it contained Yuan Li, reaching the ears of everyone present, causing the group of 5-element sect disciples to become stunned. This Duan Ling Tian. Has he gone mad? He actually dares to provoke Hu Fei like this. Is he looking for death? This Duan Ling Tian really has a lot of guts to dare to provoke Hu Fei. Among the contemporary young generation of our 5-element sect. Now, perhaps only the Nangong brothers of the Metal Peak are not afraid of this Hu Fei. I have to say, I admire Duan Ling Tian's courage. But he's definitely going to be unlucky. That's for sure. In the past decade, almost everyone who dared to speak ill of Hu Fei behind his back has met a bad end. Many more have even gone missing, and 9 out of 10 were killed by Hu Fei, with their bodies destroyed to erase all traces. One by one, the 5-element sect disciples now looked at Duan Ling Tian with a hint of pity. Although they all knew that Duan Ling Tian's strength was not bad, but after seeing Duan Ling Tian in person today, they vaguely realized that this young man, who appeared to be only around 25 years old, could not be Hu Fei's opponent. One must know that Hu Fei had now broken through to the 7th level of the void prying stage, becoming the 3rd person among the contemporary young generation of the 5-element sect to reach that level. In their opinion, Duan Ling Tian could not be Hu Fei's opponent. After hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Hu Fei was stunned, completely stunned. In the 5-element sect. When had he ever been provoked like this? And by a young man who looked to be only around 25 years old, whose words clearly showed that he didn't put him in his eyes at all. Kid, you're looking for death. Hu Fei was furious, completely furious. The next moment, his eyes flashed with a cold light, and his figure moved, a vast, soaring flame rising from his body, and he transformed into a giant flaming beast, pouncing forward, under everyone's gaze. The flaming beast pounced towards Duan Ling Tian, opening its gaping maw as if to swallow Duan Ling Tian whole. Many 5-element sect disciples closed their eyes, unable to bear the sight. In their opinion, facing Hu Fei, who was attacking in a fit of rage, Duan Ling Tian would either die or be crippled. The current Hu Fei had completely lost his rationality, throwing the rules of the 5-element sect to the back of his mind. His heart and mind solely focused on killing the purple-clad youth who dared to provoke him. Seeing Hu Fei, shrouded in flames, rushing towards him, with the phantom of 180 ancient horned dragons following above the sky, Duan Ling Tian let out a low snort and narrowed his eyes. In the depths of his eyes, a faint glow flashed, asterisk, 1,000 illusions. As a faint light flashed in Duan Ling Tian's eyes, his mental energy, which had long been building up, surged into this soul imprint deep within his soul, unleashing a soul skill. In an instant, the illusionary space swept out, engulfing an area of over 100 meters, including Hu Fei, who was currently charging towards him, like the wind sweeping away scattered clouds. The next moment, Duan Ling Tian moved aside, stepping to the side at the same time. He calmly looked at Huang Denyo and transmitted his voice with his Yuan Li, saying, Denyo, do as I say now. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Hu Fei, whose flames surged, as if he had transformed into a giant flaming beast, missed his target, just as everyone thought Hu Fei would erupt again and attack Duan Ling Tian. They saw Hu Fei, still enveloped in flames, standing still, looking around with a bewildered expression. Deep within his gaze, there was a hint of apprehension, as if he had encountered something extraordinary. In Hu Fei's eyes at this moment, he was in a boundless desert, with no one else around. An illusion? Hu Fei's face darkened, and he immediately guessed what he had encountered. I don't sense any fluctuations of inscription or inscription arrays. Could it be a special demonic beast with extraordinary talent hiding nearby, ambushing me? This was the first thought that popped into Hu Fei's mind. In his opinion, since the illusion he was currently facing was not constructed by inscriptions and inscription arrays, it must be created by a mental energy technique similar to a soul skill. Among human martial artists, only the legendary martial emperor powerhouses could create an illusion using mental energy techniques that he naturally wouldn't believe that a martial emperor powerhouse was attacking him. What a joke. A martial emperor powerhouse could kill him with just a thought. Why would they need to toy with him like this? Therefore, it could only be a demonic beast causing trouble in secret. Moreover, the demonic beast's mental energy level was at least at the void prying stage 7. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to affect him. If you have the guts, don't. Just as Hu Fei opened his mouth, preparing to say, "If you have the guts, don't play dirty," a gust of wind suddenly struck the side of his face, causing his expression to change drastically. Slap. As soon as Hu Fei reacted, a loud slap landed on the side of his face. His head was knocked to the side, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of broken teeth at the same time. That side of his face swelled up completely. The harshness of the attacker's strike was evident. Who is it? Dazed by the slap, Hu Fei finally regained his senses after spitting out his broken teeth. His face was gloomy, and the flames on his body surged again. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At the same time, Hu Fei's hand now held a spirit weapon glove made of unknown materials. With a raise of his hand, palms whistled out, covering his entire body, as if forming a dense net of heaven and earth, protecting him completely. Boom, 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 boom. Hu Fei's palm shot out, causing the air currents to be compressed, creating bursts of terrifying sonic booms that were deafening. Many solid palm prints whistled down, landing on the cliff face on one side of Golden Peak, creating loud noises and stirring up clouds of dust above the void. Apart from Duan Ling Tian, Shen Wei, and Huang Denyo, who stood silently in midair with unchanging expressions, everyone else was dumbfounded. The disciples of the Five Elements sect watched Hu Fei, who was going mad there, with wide eyes. Who can tell me what exactly is happening? I don't know. This Hu Fei attacked Duan Ling Tian, and after one failed strike, he didn't pursue Duan Ling Tian again. Instead, he stood there looking left and right, as if he couldn't find Duan Ling Tian. What a joke. Duan Ling Tian is right next to him. How could he not find Duan Ling Tian? Then what do you think he's doing now? When Huang Denyo approached him, he didn't even notice and took a slap head-on. Could Hu Fei have gone mad? A group of Five Elements sect disciples were all stunned, completely unaware of what was happening before their eyes. A moment later, perhaps from exhaustion, Hu Fei's movements slowed down. Denyo. Duan Ling Tian looked at Huang Denyo and smiled slightly. Huang Denyo's eyes lit up, and he once again darted towards Hu Fei under everyone's watchful eyes, reaching Hu Fei in a moment, raising his hand again, and swinging a slap. This instant, the surrounding group of Five Elements sect disciples felt a chill run down their spines. Many people's hearts couldn't help but be suspended. This time, could Huang Denyo succeed again? Slap. Another crisp and loud slap sound echoed, answering the question in their hearts. Seeing Hu Fei's head tilt, spitting out another mouthful of blood, mixed with many broken teeth. Many Five Elements sect disciples felt their scalps tingle. This Huang Denyo. His strikes were too ruthless, weren't they? Hu Fei's other half of his face, which was originally intact, was now completely swollen. His entire head looked like a pig's head, making it impossible to discern his true appearance. No matter who you are, you are dead. You are dead. Hu Fei, whose face had been beaten into a pig's head by Huang Denyo's two slaps, roared furiously, while the speed of his hands increased again, and vast palm prints formed a protective shield, protecting him within. Perhaps only in this way could he gain the sense of security he needed. Hu Fei's furious roars entered the ears of the Five Elements sect disciples present, causing them to pause, and then they were all dumbfounded. Hu Fei doesn't know that Huang Denyo hit him? What the hell is going on? Hu Fei not only didn't notice Huang Denyo approaching, taking two slaps from Huang Denyo head-on, but then he still didn't know it was Huang Denyo who hit him. Could he really have gone mad? I don't think he's mad. He's blind. One by one, the Five Elements sect disciples stared at Hu Fei in a daze, only feeling that the scene before them was truly unbelievable and incomprehensible. Who could tell them what was going on? I think he's not only blind, but deaf too. We've said so much, and he seems to have heard nothing. I also think he's both blind and deaf now. But why did he become like this? Among the five elements sect disciples present, apart from Hu Fei himself, Duan Ling Tian, Huang Denyo, and Shen Wei, everyone else was dumbfounded, their faces full of confusion. Even now, they still didn't know exactly what had happened. Seeing Hu Fei's movements slow down again, everyone's gaze fell back on Huang Denyo, curious as to where Huang Denyo would hit Hu Fei this time. Shen Wei, do you want to try? Duan Ling Tian looked at Shen Wei and asked with a smile. As early as when Huang Denyo had slapped Hu Fei twice and retreated unscathed, Duan Ling Tian noticed that Shen Wei was somewhat tempted. Now that the opportunity had arisen again, he couldn't help but ask. Good. Shen Wei's eyes lit up upon hearing this, and he moved, darting towards Hu Fei. Under Duan Ling Tian's guidance, Shen Wei threw a punch like lightning, hitting Hu Fei directly in the head and sending Hu Fei flying. Of course, Shen Wei held back. Otherwise, that punch alone could have taken Hu Fei's life. Although he hated Hu Fei and wanted to avenge his martial uncle, Yang Ling, he had never harbored thoughts of killing Hu Fei. He only wanted to teach Hu Fei a lesson. Now, his dream had come true just like that, giving him a feeling of being in a dream, until he couldn't help but pinch his thigh, and the intense pain from his thigh seemed to tell him this was not a dream. It was real. Who? At this moment, Hu Fei, who had been sent flying, his head bleeding, looked around in all directions in a disheveled manner. Yet he never once looked at Shen Wei. For a moment, the group of five elements sect disciples present felt a chill run down their spines. Had this Hu Fei seen a ghost? Above the void, at some unknown time, two figures appeared: a young man in blue and a young man in red. The blue-clad young man's face was expressionless, as if the sky falling had nothing to do with him, but in his eyes at this moment, there was a clear hint of surprise, as if he had discovered something. What? Did you find something? After the red-clad young man withdrew his horrified gaze, he happened to see the surprise in the blue-clad young man's eyes and couldn't help but ask curiously, mental energy. The blue-clad young man rarely spoke, his voice cold and his words as precious as gold. Mental energy? The red-clad young man's eyes lit up. You mean, Hu Fei is currently in this state because of a mental energy technique? He couldn't have encountered an illusion, could he? Towards the end, the red-clad young man couldn't help but speculate. This time, the blue-clad young man did not answer him, but stood there quietly. But his seemingly lusterless eyes were gazing intently at one person from afar. That person was the purple-clad young man, Duan Ling Tian, who was standing in midair not far from Hu Fei. Evidently, he had discovered that the owner of that mental energy was Duan Ling Tian. As the blue-clad young man stared at Duan Ling Tian seemed to sense something as well, and he suddenly raised his head, looking towards the higher void above. Soon, two figures, previously hidden in the clouds, clearly appeared before his eyes. Twin brothers. Although they were far apart, Duan Ling Tian's eyesight now far surpassed that of ordinary people, and he could tell at a glance that the two young men who appeared before him looked exactly alike, especially the blue-clad young man, whose gaze, fixed on him, seemed capable of seeing through him entirely. Inscription master? Soon, Duan Ling Tian sensed a faint fluctuation of mental energy, which originated from the blue-clad young man, causing him to be surprised. Moreover, from the blue-clad young man's mental energy fluctuations, he also confirmed one thing. The blue-clad young man's mental energy level was not below his own. Duan Ling Tian knew all too well what this meant. Could it be? These two are the Nangong brothers of Golden Peak that those five elements sect disciples mentioned earlier. Duan Ling Tian's heart skipped a beat. If you're so brave, don't resort to sneak attacks. Do you people from Wood Peak only rely on external forces? It seems I had foresight and left Wood Peak early. Otherwise, associating with people like you would be a disgrace to me. Hu Fei. Hu Fei continued to roar furiously. As he roared, he rapidly moved his body, as if afraid someone would ambush him again. Two slaps and one punch had turned Hu Fei into a pig's head, leaving him bruised and bleeding, utterly disheveled, completely devoid of his initial high spirits. Watching Hu Fei, who seemed to have turned into a ball of flame, constantly streaking across the sky, a group of five element sect disciples were dumbfounded. They believed that the scene they witnessed today would be an unforgettable one for the rest of their lives. Hu Fei, the third, seventh-level void prying stage martial artist, to emerge among the contemporary young generation of the Five-Element sect, was acting as if he had seen a ghost or been possessed in front of the three Wood Peak disciples. That Duan Ling Tian is not simple. Of course, there was no shortage of meticulous thinkers among the Five-Element sect disciples. Their gazes immediately fell on the distant purple figure. In their eyes, everything that was happening originated from this purple-clothed youth, Duan Ling Tian. At first, Hu Fei had clamored to teach Xunwei a lesson, calling Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo useless at that time. The expressions of Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo were clearly observed by them. Huang Dinyo was furious, his eyes red, almost losing his mind. In contrast, Duan Ling Tian was calm, took a step forward, swept a faint glance at Hu Fei, and then said, "Are you worthy?" At that moment, their first thought, like most Five-Element sect disciples, was that Duan Ling Tian was simply seeking death. Because Duan Ling Tian was simply too young, they couldn't possibly associate him with a strong expert who could defeat Hu Fei. However, as time passed and things developed to this point, they had no choice but to reevaluate Duan Ling Tian. From the moment Duan Ling Tian provoked Hu Fei, everything seemed to have been completely under Duan Ling Tian's control. He was the true master. Facing Hu Fei, who attacked in anger, he showed no fear and met him head dash on. It was only at the critical moment when Hu Fei lunged that he narrowly dodged to the side. After that, he never left that spot, watching Hu Fei's performance like a monkey show. This Duan Ling Tian is someone who absolutely cannot be provoked. For a moment, the few Five-Element sect disciples who had reacted felt a chill rise in their hearts, rushing straight to their heads, making them shiver involuntarily. A thought subconsciously popped into their minds. Better to provoke Hu Fei than to offend Ling Tian. Who are those people? At some point, three more young men walked side by side from a distance. The young man on the right, looking at the ball of flame constantly moving in the air, couldn't help but ask. The young man on the left, looking at the celestial phenomenon above the void, his face slightly changed. 250 ancient horned dragon powers. He knew very well what 250 ancient horned dragon powers meant. Even a 7th-level void prying stage martial artist would need to comprehend 7th-level mid-grade intent and use a 3rd-grade spirit weapon to summon the power of heaven and earth and form such a celestial phenomenon. It's Hu Fei. The young man in the middle exclaimed in a low voice. He wore a green robe, had an ordinary appearance, and a hint of apprehension flickered in his eyes. He muttered, "I thought that once I broke through to the 6th-level void prying stage, I would be able to contend with Hu Fei. But I didn't expect him to have already broken through to the 7th-level void prying stage." After muttering to himself, the green-robed youth sighed. "What?" Hearing the green-robed youth's words, the youths on both sides widened their eyes, staring blankly at the young man in the ball of flame that was constantly moving. The young man's face was swollen like a pig's head, half of it covered in blood, looking extremely disheveled. They found it hard to associate this young man with Hu Fei, the number one among the contemporary young generation of Fire Peak. Who exactly made Hu Fei so disheveled? The green-robed youth's attention shifted from Hu Fei to other places. Among the young generation of the Five-Element sect, only the Nangong brothers from Gold Peak could have made Hu Fei so disheveled. However, the Nangong brothers and Hu Fei had always kept to themselves, so it was unlikely they would treat Hu Fei like this. Moreover, the Nangong brothers were not present now. His gaze gradually shifted to the three figures near Hu Fei, three young men, of whom he only recognized one. It's Xunwei from Wood Peak. He hadn't cared about Xunwei in the past, and he still didn't care about him now. His gaze quickly fell on the other two. These two should be the two young powerhouses recruited by Wood Peak some time ago. I think they're called Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo. For a moment, a hint of apprehension appeared in the green-robed youth's eyes that he vaguely realized that Hu Fei's disheveled state was most likely related to these two. "Tunjun, you've arrived so early." At some point, a light and melodious voice came. causing the green-robed youth's gaze to suddenly shift to the woman flying over from a distance. The woman wore a green dress, had a graceful figure, and although her appearance wasn't devastatingly beautiful, it was extremely outstanding, enough to captivate many men as soon as she appeared. She attracted the attention of many five-element sect disciples. It's senior sister Tan Huan. Senior sister Tan Huan is here. Before long, most of the five-element sect disciples' gazes shifted from the seemingly crazy mad Hu Fei to the green-clothed woman in the distance. Duan Ling Tian glanced at the green-clothed woman, his eyes rarely brightening. His extended spiritual power immediately told him the cultivation of this green-clothed woman. 6th level void prying stage. Such a young woman with a cultivation of 6th level void prying stage was rare. Her name is Tan Huan. She is the personal disciple of the Water Peak Master and also the number one among the contemporary young generation of Water Peak, with a cultivation of 5th level void prying stage. After noticing where Duan Ling Tian's gaze was directed, Xin Wei said with a hint of apprehension, 5th level void prying stage? Hearing Xin Wei's words, Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled. Xin Wei, she's not just 5th level void prying stage anymore. What? Xin Wei was greatly astonished, exclaiming, you mean she broke through? Duan Ling Tian nodded. I didn't expect her to break through too. As if thinking of something, Xin Wei sighed. When his gaze fell on Duan Ling Tian, a smile couldn't help but appear on his face again. What if they all broke through? Today, as long as Duan Ling Tian was here, the rise of their Wood Peak would be unstoppable. Who was that green-robed youth talking to Tan Huan? Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes, staring at the green-robed youth in the middle, flanked by two other young men, and asked curiously that he noticed this person because Duan Ling Tian discovered that he was also a young powerhouse who had entered the 6th level void prying stage. He is Tian Jun from Earth Peak, the son of the Earth Peak Master. Xin Wei said with a look of apprehension. Half a month ago, he had already broken through to the 6th level void prying stage. But I didn't expect Tan Huan to have broken through as well. This time's 5 Peaks battle will likely be quite lively. Towards the end, Xin Wei smiled. Gold Peak had the Nangong brothers. Wood Peak had Duan Ling Tian. Water Peak had Tan Huan. Fire Peak had Hu Fei. Earth Peak had Tian Jun as for Huang Dinyo. Under the brilliant light of Duan Ling Tian, he was overshadowed and directly ignored by Xin Wei. Of course, this was also because Xin Wei didn't know that Huang Dinyo had also broken through to the 6th level void prying stage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have thought that way. Tian Jun, is that Hu Fei? What exactly happened? Tan Huan's gaze, shot from her eyes, fell on Hu Fei, who was constantly moving back and forth. Her face was filled with surprise, completely unaware of what had happened to Hu Fei to make him so disheveled. I just arrived too. Tianjin shrugged, indicating that he also didn't know. Whoosh, whoosh. Just then, 2 sharp whistling sounds descended from the sky. 2 figures, one red and one blue, appeared before everyone's eyes in an instant, attracting everyone's attention. These were 2 handsome young men who looked exactly alike. One wore red clothes, always with a gentle smile on his face, making people feel as if they were basking in a spring breeze. The other wore blue clothes, standing there with a stern face, keeping people at a distance. The 2 stood together, one dynamic and one static, creating a great contrast. It's senior brother Yi and senior brother Chun. Immediately, many disciples of the 5-element sect's Gold Peak brightened their eyes and exclaimed, Senior brother Yi, senior brother Chun. The young generation disciples of the 5-element sect present all enthusiastically greeted the 2. Nangong Chun and Nangong Yi were a pair of twin brothers. They were also the personal disciples of their 5-element sect's strongest expert, the 5-element sect master. Their status was not only extraordinary in Gold Peak, but they were also considered prodigies in the entire 5-element sect. Junior brother Tian, junior sister Tan. Congratulations. Nangong Yi, dressed in red and enthusiastic as fire, immediately looked at Tian Jun and Tan Huan after appearing, smiling and congratulating them. For a moment, many 5-element sect disciples' gazes fell on the 2. Did senior sister Tan Huan also break through? Many people whispered, speculating. Tianjun was fine. The news of his breakthrough had already spread half a month ago, so it wasn't much of a secret. Senior brother Yi, you already know. Tianhuan's pretty face changed color. She hadn't expected Nangong Yi to know that she had broken through. Point one must know that the matter of her breakthrough. Besides her and her master, the Water Peak Master, no third person knew. Now that Nangong Yi had revealed it, how could she not be surprised? She believed that her master would not possibly spread the news of her breakthrough. Asterisk, Junior Sister Tan, when you came over just now, there was a fleeting moment when your speed reached its peak. Although the natural phenomenon didn't have time to fully materialize, I could still tell that your speed at that time was far from simply being at the void transformation stage. Fifth leveled, Nangong Yi said with a smile, his already handsome face gaining a few extra points of charm. This caused a blush to appear on the faces of a group of 5-element sect female disciples, including Tan Huan, all of whom were captivated by Nangong Yi's words and demeanor. So, Senior Brother Yi, you arrived a long time ago? Tan Huan recovered her senses, looked at Nangong Yi, and a charming smile bloomed on her pretty face. I should have arrived a little earlier than you. Junior Sister Tan. Nangong Yi nodded. Senior Brother Yi, what about me? At this moment, Tianjun, who was nearby, seemed to recall something. Her eyes flashed, and she asked directly, you? Nangong Yi smiled and said, I also arrived a little earlier than you, I suppose. So, Senior Brother Yi knows what happened to Hu Fei earlier? Tianjun's eyes lit up, and she asked curiously, I'm not entirely sure what exactly happened. I just arrived not long ago. However, I think many of the senior and junior brothers and sisters present have seen the whole story unfold. Nangong Yi said, looking towards the group of 5-element sect disciples in the distance, his eyes full of wisdom. Senior Brother Yi, I know. I know. Just then, an ordinary-looking female disciple excitedly flew out, reaching a spot not far from Nangong Yi in a moment. Looking at him with an excited expression, for the female disciples of the 5-element sect, the Nangong brothers were undoubtedly their dream lovers. Countless times in their midnight dreams, they saw only the figures of these two strongest young disciples of the current 5-element sect. What is your name, Junior Sister? Nangong Yi smiled at the female disciple, whose face flushed red, feeling as if her breathing was about to stop. After a moment, she finally reacted and said with some excitement and trepidation, Senior Brother Yi, I am Chunbai, Junior Sister Chun. The smile on Nangong Yi's face became even more charming, and he gently comforted her. Don't be nervous. Just tell us everything that happened just now. Chunbai nodded, took a deep breath, and began to calm herself. At this moment, the surrounding group of 5-element sect female disciples all had red eyes, wishing they could take Chunbai's place. Chunbai got ahead of me. Why didn't I react? Otherwise, it wouldn't be Chunbai showing off in front of Senior Brother Yi, but me. Many female disciples regretted that I in the distance. Duan Ling Tian saw this scene and couldn't help but be speechless. Humph. Those Nangong brothers, they're just pretty boys. And, if you ask me, they're not as good-looking as Duan Ling Tian. Those infatuated girls, to be so shameless for them. Huang Denyo snorted, seemingly very displeased with the reactions of the group of 5-element sect female disciples. Denyo, Shenwei, who was beside him, shook his head and smiled. They are popular not just because they are good-looking. The most important reason is that they are the most outstanding young disciples of our 5-element sect. In this world where strength is respected, a man's charm is not just about his appearance, it is more about his martial power. If one's strength is extremely weak, what good is it to be perfectly beautiful and handsome? A man who is extremely ugly, as long as he is strong enough, can control one's destiny with a flick of his hand. Nangong Chun. Duan Ling Tian stood to the side, quietly meeting the gaze of the blue-clad youth standing in the distant void. This young man, with his stern face, taciturn nature, and a sense of being out of place with everything around him, gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. This feeling was not something that Nangong Yi could give him. I originally thought that with my current strength, relying on the soul skill, 1,000 illusions, I would be enough to dominate among the current young generation of the 5-element sect. But now it seems I still underestimated the Five Elements sect. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself, facing Nangong Chun. He wasn't entirely confident. Nangong Yi, standing beside Nangong Chun, as well as Tian Jun and Tan Huan, soon learned the whole story from the female disciple of the Five Elements sect. For a moment, the three of them looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo intently, as if trying to discern something from them. Interesting, interesting. It seems that this time, Wood Peak might not necessarily be at the bottom. Nangong Yi smiled slightly. It was none of his business, so he remained detached. However, Tian Jun and Tan Huan, who were beside him, couldn't remain as calm as Nangong Yi. Their expressions were extremely solemn. They exchanged glances, both seeing the sparks of determination in each other's eyes, if that was truly a technique used by either Duan Ling Tian or Huang Denyo. They had no confidence in dealing with both Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo. After all, even Hu Fei, who was stronger than them, had fallen victim. Hu Fei was a disciple of Fire Peak, and they considered themselves inferior to him. Therefore, the last place peak among the 5 peaks of the 5 element sect could only be decided between their Water Peak and Earth Peak, and neither of them wanted their own peak to be at the bottom. The peak that came in last would not receive the better cultivation resources uniformly distributed by the 5 element sect for the next 3 years, because all the good cultivation resources would have been divided among the top 4 peaks. Given analogy. It was like the last place peak could only eat the leftovers after the other 4 peaks had feasted. But senior brother Hu Fei kept roaring just now, saying something about external force. The female disciple added, external force? As soon as the female disciple said this, Tian Jun and Tan Huan, who were already in a tense atmosphere, their eyes suddenly lit up. If Hu Fei's predicament was due to an external force, then they truly had nothing to worry about, because during the Battle of the 5 Peaks, representatives from each peak were forbidden from using any external force, including spirit weapons. They could only fight barehanded, with their elemental energy and insights. The reason for such a requirement was that the 5 element sect did not wish for any disciple from any peak to suffer an accident once they used spirit weapons. Even with a group of 5 element sect high-ranking officials present, they might not always be able to provide timely assistance to 5 element sect disciples in danger. In the past, the 5 element sect had suffered many similar losses. Therefore, in the current battle of the 5 peaks, the young generation representatives of each peak are forbidden from using any external force, including spirit weapons. Without external force, they are definitely no match for Hu Fei, and they might not even be a match for us. Tian Jun and Tan Huan exchanged a knowing glance, smiling at each other, both having guessed the other's thoughts. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Suddenly, the sky above was turbulent, and then figures appeared out of thin air. Among these people, there were middle-aged men and old men. Seeing these people, the 5 element sect disciples present all showed solemn respect, finally looking with awe at the plain-clothed middle-aged man leading them. Sect leader, sect leader, sect leader. All the 5 element sect disciples respectfully saluted the plain-clothed middle-aged man. He is the sect leader of the 5 element sect? For a moment, Duan Ling Tian's gaze also fell on the plain-clothed middle-aged man. The middle-aged man wore a simple plain robe. His appearance was extremely ordinary, with a hint of determination in his face, and his calm eyes appeared even more profound, as if they could encompass all rivers. Immediately after, Duan Ling Tian's gaze shifted backward, and he saw Yang Ling and Ku Zheng. This moment, Yang Ling and Ku Zheng were following behind a gray-robed middle-aged man, and this gray-robed middle-aged man was standing shoulder to shoulder with 4 others, behind the 5 element sect leader. Is he the peak master of Wood Peak? Duan Ling Tian secretly guessed, unlike the ordinary appearance of the 5 element sect leader. Although this Wood Peak master was past middle age, and time had left traces of vicissitudes on his face, looking at the contours of his face, he must have been a rare handsome man in his youth. Soon, Duan Ling Tian noticed that the Wood Peak master was looking directly at him and nodded with a smile. Are you Duan Ling Tian? At the same time, Duan Ling Tian's eardrums vibrated slightly, and he heard a magnetic voice of a middle-aged man. The owner of this voice was undoubtedly the Wood Peak Master. Duan Ling Tian greets the Peak Master. Also, thank you, Peak Master, for the Hanyuan fruit you gifted me a few days ago. Duan Ling Tian responded with elemental energy condensed into sound. Third place. Do you have confidence? After a moment of silence, the Wood Peak Master's voice rang out again. Third? Hearing the Wood Peak Master's words, Duan Ling Tian was first taken aback, then reacted, realizing what he was referring to. It was nothing more than the specific ranking of the 5 peaks after today's battle. Of the 5 peaks, the Wood Peak Master was asking him if he had the confidence to make Wood Peak rank 3rd among the 5 peaks. Peak Master, my goal is at least 2nd place. If there's an opportunity, I will take 1st place. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed, and he responded with elemental energy condensed into sound. Good, good. If you can secure 2nd place, I personally owe you a favor. In the future, whatever you ask for, as long as it is within my power and does not harm the 5-element sect, I can fulfill it. The Wood Peak Master's elemental energy condensed into sound was filled with hearty laughter. Making a promise. Thank you, Peak Master. In Duan Ling Tian's view, the Wood Peak Master's promise was no different from a free gift. Hu Fei, what are you doing? Suddenly, a loud voice came, startling Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian looked over and realized that an old man standing side by side with the Wood Peak Master behind the 5-element sect leader was looking at Hu Fei, who was still constantly darting around. With a slightly darkened expression, Hu Fei's disheveled state was seen by the old man, which was the reason for his grim expression. Spiritual power? Just then, a short, stout middle-aged man beside the old man narrowed his eyes, as if he had discovered something. What strong spiritual power? Almost at the same time, Duan Ling Tian felt a powerful spiritual force sweep over, instantly shattering the illusionary space he had constructed with the soul skill 1,000 illusions. Which Peak Master is that short, fat man? Duan Ling Tian's gaze immediately fell on the middle-aged fat man, and he asked Shun Wei beside him. He is Tiangu, the Peak Master of Earth Peak. Shun Wei said, Peak Master of Earth Peak? Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow. So he's Tianjin's father? Shun Wei nodded. Earth Peak. Duan Ling Tian was no stranger to Earth Peak. Before he came to the 5-element sect, when he was still in Inding City, a disciple from Earth Peak, who was secretly lurking in the Wood Peak outpost, tried to tempt him to join Earth Peak by offering a 2nd-grade spirit weapon and 7th-level concept fragment. So, he had already had dealings with Earth Peak, seeing that Tiangu, the Peak Master of Earth Peak, shattered the illusionary space with his spiritual energy and immediately focused his gaze on him. Duan Ling Tian knew that Tiangu had discovered that he was the owner of the spiritual energy that constructed the illusionary space. He didn't care and met Tiangu's gaze without any fear. But soon, Duan Ling Tian and Tiangu simultaneously shifted their gazes away from each other, turning their attention to another place at some point. The old man standing beside Tiangu disappeared from Duan Ling Tian's sight and reappeared beside Hu Fei, who was still shaken, beaten into a pig's head, and looking utterly disheveled. Hu Fei, what were you doing just now? The old man's face was grim as he reprimanded Hu Fei that he never expected his proud disciple to be in such a sorry state today, and in front of a group of high-ranking officials and disciples of the 5-element sect, bringing him utter disgrace. He is Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak. Shun Wei's voice clearly entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. Duan Ling Tian nodded that in fact, even if Shun Wei hadn't said anything, he would have guessed the old man's identity. This old man had just been standing in a line with Tiangu, the Peak Master of Earth Peak, and their own Peak Master of Wood Peak. There were 4 people in total standing in a line behind the 5-element sect's sect master. Thus, their identities were obvious. They were the Peak Masters of the other 4 peaks of the 5-element sect, excluding Metal Peak, Master. At this moment, Hu Fei finally came to his senses. When he saw Cha Bai in front of him and noticed the strange gazes around him, a chilling glint appeared in his eyes. Shun Wei, I'm going to kill you all. Hu Fei suddenly looked at Duan Ling Tian, Huang Denyo, and Shen Wei, who were standing not far away. The flames rising from his body became more rampant, and he was about to attack the three of them. Slap. A crisp slap echoed as Cha Bai raised his hand and slapped Hu Fei, making half of Hu Fei's face even more swollen. Are you not ashamed enough? Cha Bai's gloomy voice was clearly tinged with anger. After receiving a slap from Cha Bai, Hu Fei's body trembled violently. With a jolt, he finally sobered up and lowered his head in shame. Master, this disciple is useless and has disgraced you. However, if they hadn't used external force, this disciple wouldn't have been so disheveled. Master, rest assured, once the Battle of the Five Peaks begins, as long as they dare to make a move, this disciple will make them regret it for the rest of their lives. Towards the end, Hu Fei gritted his teeth, his cold, hateful eyes gleaming with a chilling light as he swept them over Duan Ling Tian and the other two that upon hearing Hu Fei's words. The surrounding five-element sect disciples erupted in an uproar. External force? Hu Fei was made so disheveled by external force. In an instant, they realized what had happened. No wonder the situation just now was so strange. It turns out that the people from Wood Peak used external force and made senior brother Hu Fei suffer such a silent loss. In the Battle of the Five Peaks, no one is allowed to use external force, otherwise, it counts as a loss. These three from Wood Peak are probably in for trouble if they don't surrender. I'm now somewhat looking forward to seeing how senior brother Hu Fei, having suffered such humiliation, will retaliate against those three from Wood Peak. Many five-element sect disciples discussed animatedly, all thinking that Duan Ling Tian and the other two were in for trouble. Of course, there were exceptions, for example, the Nangong brothers, as well as Tian Gu, the Peak Master of Earth Peak, the Peak Master of Wood Peak, and the two old men behind him, Yang Ling and Ku Zhang, senior brother Yang. It seems the three little guys have helped you vent a lot of pent-up anger, Ku Zhang said with a smile to Yang Ling. Yang Ling nodded slightly, but no emotional fluctuations could be seen on his face. At this moment, his gaze fell on Hu Fei, whose facial injuries were recovering at a visible speed after taking a healing pill. A complex glimmer flickered in his eyes. 10 years later, he found that when he faced this disciple who had betrayed him in the past, he no longer felt as angry as before. Everything seemed to have faded. Time, indeed, could dilute everything. Now, please. The peak masters of the other four peaks and the young representatives of the other four peaks gather. In half an hour, the Battle of the Five Peaks will begin. At that time, the five peaks will be re-ranked. And according to their ranking, the sect resources that each peak will enjoy for the next 3 years will be determined. Soon, the sect master of the five-element sect announced in a loud voice. Immediately, the peak masters of the 3 peaks behind the five-element sect's sect master, along with the elders behind them, dispersed one by one, flying towards a side of the void not far away. For example, the peak master of Wood Peak, with Yang Ling and Ku Zhang, came to Duan Ling Tian and the other two. Peak master, Duan Ling Tian and the other two smiled and greeted the peak master of Wood Peak, then looked at Yang Ling and Ku Zhang, greeting them as well. During this time, Duan Ling Tian learned the name of the peak master of Wood Peak, Qiyu, from Shun Wei's Spiritual Energy Voice Transmission (AS) for the sect master of the five-element sect. His name was Guochong. Tian Gu, the peak master of Earth Peak, gathered with an elder from Earth Peak and Tian Zhun. Father. Tian Zhun respectfully greeted Tian Gu, and the other two beside him also respectfully called Tian Gu Peak Master. Tian Gu smiled and nodded. However, although there was a smile on his face, a hint of worry appeared between his brows, as if he was concerned about something. Father, don't worry. I will definitely defeat the two young powerhouses Wood Peak found and won't let Earth Peak come in. Last, Tianjin seemed to have guessed what his father was worried about and comforted him. No, hearing Tianjin's words, Tiangu shook his head. Tianjin looked puzzled. Jin'er, your opponent this time isn't the two from Wood Peak, but Tan Huan from Water Peak. At this point, Tiangu looked into the distance. There, Tan Huan was gathering with a middle-aged woman. The middle-aged woman was Yu Fong, the peak master of Water Peak, a mere woman. To become the master of Water Peak, one of the 5 peaks of the five-element sect. Yufeng was naturally not a simple person, and her cultivation was no less than that of Cha Bai and Tiangu. Father, I might not be able to defeat Tanhuan. She has also broken through to the Void Transformation Realm 6th level, Tianjun said with a bitter smile that I in the past. When he and Tanhuan were both Void Transformation Realm 5th level martial artists, they had already fought at that time. He was slightly inferior, originally. He thought that after breaking through to the Void Transformation Realm 6th level, he could overpower Tanhuan, but he didn't expect Tanhuan to have also broken through. What? Tiangu was startled. She also broke through? It seems our Earth Peak is truly in danger this time. Jinner, you must try your best to defeat Tanhuan. Otherwise, our Earth Peak will remain dormant for 3 years. Father, what are you saying? Even if I can't defeat Tanhuan, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo from Wood Peak might not be my opponents. I heard they are only Void Transformation Realm 5th level martial artists. Tianjin said, humph. Tiangu snorted coldly. Someone who can make Hu Fei so disheveled. Do you think he could be a Void Transformation Realm 5th level martial artist? Tianjun was stunned, then said, Father, didn't Hu Fei just say? It was because the 3 from Wood Peak used external force, which is why he was so disheveled. And in the Battle of the 5 Peaks, external force cannot be used. At this point, a confident smile appeared on Tianjun's face. Once they can't use external force, it won't be difficult for me to defeat them. External force? Tiangu sneered. Hu Fei said it was external force, and you actually believe it was external force? It seems the name your old man gave you back then was spot on. Tianjun, naive. Father, what do you mean by that? Tianjun vaguely realized that something was wrong, and his expression became solemn. You should know that your old man, besides being a martial artist, is also an inscription master who has studied the path of inscriptions and can project spiritual energy. Do you know that Hu Fei was just rescued by me? Tiangu said, Father, I know you're an inscription master, and I also know that an inscription master can project spiritual energy. But what do you mean by saying Hu Fei was rescued by you? Tianjun asked with a puzzled expression. If I'm not mistaken, Hu Fei was just in a place similar to an illusion, and that illusion was constructed based on spiritual energy. Tiangu took a deep breath and whispered his guess. What? An illusion? And an illusion constructed by spiritual energy methods. Tianjun's pupils contracted, and he said in horror, could it be that beside Duan Ling Tian and the other 2, there's a special demonic beast with an innate soul imprint that can use soul skills without reaching the Emperor realm? If that were a demonic beast's method, it would still be considered external force and wouldn't affect the Battle of the 5 Peaks, Tiangu snorted, then said with a hint of apprehension, but the problem is, after I shattered that illusion constructed by spiritual energy with my spiritual energy, I found that the owner of that spiritual energy was Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian. These 3 words, entering Tianjun's ears, were like a clap of thunder, making his face change dramatically. Father, you mean that Duan Ling Tian can construct an illusion using spiritual energy methods? Could he be a demon? Tianjun gasped, his face filled with shock. Demon. Even the weakest demon was a Void Transformation Realm 1st level existence. To defeat him, one encounter would be enough? Of course not. Although his spiritual energy is good, it's still far from the level of spiritual energy in the Void Transformation Realm. I suspect he is most likely a hybrid, an abnormal being born from a human and a demon, one of those heaven-defying anomalies with innate divine abilities. Tiangu stated his guess. Asterisk an anomaly? Upon hearing this, Tianjun's pupils constricted, and his face was filled with horror. He had, of course, heard of anomalies. They were either mediocre or heaven-defying. Duan Ling Tian was clearly the latter. Innate divine ability. He's using an innate divine ability. Tianjun looked at Tiangu, his eyes revealing deep apprehension, and he exclaimed through his Yuan force condensed voice, that's the only possibility. Tiangu nodded, his expression incredibly solemn. After all, for a human who was neither a demon nor a martial emperor powerhouse to be able to use a soul skill-like technique with spiritual force. It could only mean they were an anomaly. However, Tian Gu could never have imagined Duan Ling Tian's ability to construct an illusionary space with his spiritual force wasn't because he was some anomaly, but because he had inherited a soul imprint deep within his soul. That soul imprint originated from an inscription master. That inscription master's cultivation might not have been remarkable, but his dedication to the path of inscriptions was truly astonishing. This could be seen from his ability to research and develop this soul imprint. Father, I will do my best. After learning Duan Ling Tian's background, Tianjin no longer had any thoughts of competing with Wood Peak. His attention was entirely focused on a woman in the distance. Water Peak, Tanhuan. For Earth Peak, he had to win 2 representatives from the younger generation for each peak. From Wood Peak Master Chi Yu's words, Duan Ling Tian learned the rules of the 5-peak battle and couldn't help but feel a little surprised that in the 5-peak battle, each of the 5-element sect's 5 peaks would send 2 representatives. Both representatives had to be disciples of the younger generation. Our Wood Peak's representatives are you and Daniel. Work hard, Yang Ling said with a smile to Duan Ling Tian and Huang Daniel. Elder Yang, don't worry. Duan Ling Tian and I will definitely win first place in this 5-peak battle for Wood Peak. And let Wood Peak ascend to the top of the 5 peaks. Huang Daniel said confidently, waving his fist. The reason he dared to say this was naturally because he had confidence in Duan Ling Tian. Because of this, he felt they had absolute certainty of helping Wood Peak win first place in the 5-peak battle. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. He naturally guessed Huang Daniel's thoughts and felt that Huang Daniel underestimated. The people from Metal Peak, too much .1, should know that even he wouldn't dare to say he had absolute certainty from Metal Peak. The 2 Nangong brothers would definitely be participating. He wasn't afraid of Nangong, but he couldn't help but be wary of Nangong Chun. Nangong Chun, like him, was an inscription master. Perhaps Nangong Chen's attainments in the path of inscriptions were far inferior to his, but as an inscription master, Nangong Chun could freely control his own spiritual force, coupled with the fact that Nangong Chen's spiritual force level was comparable to his current spiritual force level. His soul skill, 1,000 illusions, would have no effect. No need for first. Second place is enough. Chi Yu shook his head, then looked at Duan Ling Tian and smiled. Duan Ling Tian, don't you agree? I will do my best. Duan Ling Tian said seriously. I believe you. Chi Yu nodded. Over at Metal Peak, which was where the 5-element sect master, Guochong, was located. Now, 2 figures had appeared beside Guochong. 2 young men who looked exactly alike, a pair of twin brothers. One dressed in red and the other in green. They were Nangong Chun and Nangong. The 2 were Guochong's direct disciples, and his only 2 disciples. Even with just these 2 disciples, Guochong was proud enough and envied by many, whether it was Nangong Chun or Nangong. Both were martial arts prodigies with extraordinary talent. At just over 30 years old, they were already the leaders among the younger generation of the 5-element sect. No problem, right? Guochong suddenly spoke, clearly asking his 2 direct disciples beside him. He is not Duan Ling Tian's match. To everyone's surprise, the one who spoke first this time was not Nangong, but the stern-faced Nangong Chun. When answering Guochong's question, Nangong Chen's stern expression noticeably softened a little. Oh. Guochong's eyes lit up, and he asked curiously, how do you say that? Master, that Duan Ling Tian is a little monster. According to me and my second, Nangong, he was about to say second brother, when he felt Nangong Chen's cold, knife-like gaze sweep over him. And for a moment he could only swallow the brother back. After swallowing it back, he continued, according to my and his guess, Duan Ling Tian should be an anomaly. An anomaly? As soon as Nangong finished speaking, Guochong's pupils constricted, and a look of shock appeared on his face. As the 5-element sect master, he naturally knew what the word anomaly meant. Anomaly, either mediocre or heaven-defying. And clearly, Duan Ling Tian was not the former. Why do you think he is an anomaly? Guochong asked. Nangong took a deep breath and recounted everything he knew. Of course, What he spoke of was nothing more than the incident where Hu Fei was teased by Duan Ling Tian. Are you sure that the illusion was constructed by Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force? After listening, Guochong looked at Nangong Chun with a solemn expression. Although he had noticed Hu Fei's abnormality when he first arrived, he heard Hu Fei repeatedly mention external force afterward, and only thought that Duan Ling Tian and the other two had used external force. He never expected that it was not some external force, but Duan Ling Tian. This anomaly's innate divine ability. MHM. Nangong Chen nodded heavily, incredibly certain. Guochong took a deep breath. He knew this disciple of his too well. Unless he was absolutely certain, he would never nod. What level is his spiritual force at? Guochong continued to ask. No less than mine. Nangong Chen said truthfully. 7th level of the void prying stage? Guochong's pupils constricted, and he said in horror, no wonder you said error is not his match. It seems he either concealed his cultivation or consumed a spiritual fruit that can enhance the soul. As the 5-element sect master, Guochong was well informed and quickly guessed many things. Chener, how confident are you against him? Guochong asked. 90%. Nangong Chen pondered for a moment before speaking. Not 100% confident. Guochong frowned. Metal Peak had always been the first peak of the 5-element sect, and its status had remained unchanged no matter how many years passed. But today, if Metal Peak were to lose to Wood Peak, the myth that Metal Peak had built since the 5-element sect's inception would be shattered. That was not something he wanted to see. No, Nangong Chen shook his head, his stern gaze fixed on the purple figure in the distance. He gives me a very dangerous feeling. I'm not sure if a miracle will appear in him. A miracle? Hearing Nangong Chen's words, Guochong frowned. Then his brows relaxed, and he smiled openly. Yes. After all, he is an anomaly. Anomalies, especially those with innate divine abilities, were also known as the darlings of the heavens on the Cloud Continent in the history of the 5-element sect. An anomaly had never appeared before, and today, during his time as the 5-element sect master, an anomaly appeared. This alone was enough for future generations of the 5-element sect to remember him forever. That time, they would say, in the past, our 5-element sect had a sect master named Guochong. In the era he governed the sect, an anomaly appeared in the sect. An anomaly with innate divine abilities. Over at Fire Peak Master Cha Bai's face was grim, and between his eyes, as he looked at the people from Wood Peak, an extreme rage seemed to burn, a rage that could incinerate everything. His direct disciple being humiliated in such a way was, for him, a humiliation, a naked humiliation. Duan Ling Tian, Huang Dinyo. As long as you dare to step onto the stage and fight me, even if I can't kill you, I will definitely cripple you. Only then can I quell the hatred in Hu Fei's heart. In the world within Hu Fei's eyes, only 2 young men seemed to remain. His eyes, as he stared at the two, were filled with a dense, bloody red, eager to devour them. Over at Water Peak, Huaner, you have already broken through to the 6th level of the void prying stage. Suppressing those 2 from Wood Peak shouldn't be a problem. However, Master still hopes you can also suppress Tianjun, allowing Water Peak to remain the 3rd peak of the 5-element sect. Water Peak Master Yufeng said with a solemn expression, Master, don't worry, I will definitely go all out. Tan Huan nodded heavily. Now, in addition to the 4 young disciples from Metal Peak and Wood Peak who were already in position, there were also 3 other people from Fire Peak, Water Peak, and Earth Peak, besides Hu Fei, Tan Huan, and Tianjun. Half an hour passed quickly. Old rules. 5-element sect master Gua Chong glanced at the peak masters of the other 4 peaks and slowly spoke. Just as the 4 peak masters' eyes narrowed and the surrounding 5-element sect disciples watched intently, Guochong moved whoosh, 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 whoosh. Guochong raised his hand, and 10 swift streaks of light shot into the sky, disappearing into the clouds in an instant. What are they doing? Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo looked puzzled. They had only recently arrived at the 5-element sect, experiencing the 5-peak battle for the first time and witnessing such a scene for the first time. They are 10 pieces of paper. On each paper, Numbers from 1 to 10 are written. The 10 young talents from the 5 peaks will compete according to these numbers, until the specific rankings are decided. Shinwei explained. The 5-peak battle is divided into 2 stages, individual battles and team battles. This is the first stage, individual battles. Duan Ling Tian suddenly understood. Huang Dinyo's pupils constricted, and he exclaimed in shock, "Those are actually 10 pieces of paper? My goodness." As expected of the sect master, his strength is truly terrifying. If he were to throw those pieces of paper at me, wouldn't my life be in danger? Compared to Huang Dinyo's fuss, Duan Ling Tian was calm. Guochong, the 5-element sect master. His cultivation had probably already reached the peak of the Void Realm. For a powerhouse at the peak of the Void Realm, even just a piece of paper could become a deadly weapon in their hands. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At this moment, high in the sky, 10 pieces of paper drifted down, slowly rotating. The rotating slips of paper occasionally revealed the numbers written on them as the slips of paper drew closer. The 5 peak masters, including the sect leader of the 5-element sect, who was also the Golden Peak Master, Guochong, all made their move simultaneously, whoosh. As Guochong raised his hand, an invisible force rose into the sky, sweeping towards the 10 slips of paper with a fierce momentum, causing a series of ear-piercing air explosions. Boom, 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 boom. The Wood Peak Master, Chiyu, the Fire Peak Master, Chabai, the Water Peak Master, Yufang, and the Earth Peak Master, Tiangu, also made their moves almost at the same time. However, their speed was not as fast as Guochong's. Whoosh, whoosh. Soon, 2 of the slips of paper, as if pulled by 2 invisible forces, instantly turned into 2 streaks of lightning and shot towards Guochong, who easily caught them. The 2 slips of paper for Golden Peak were thus obtained. Number 1, number 10. Duan Ling Tian, with his sharp eyes, had already seen the numbers on the 2 slips of paper. As they were pulled towards Guochong, that he knew these were the numbers Guochong had chosen, and his choice of these 2 numbers was likely advantageous to Golden Peak. Whoosh, whoosh. The second person to get 2 slips of paper was the Wood Peak Master, Chiyu, who was recognized by most people in the 5-element sect as the second strongest person in the sect. The 2 slips of paper he obtained were number 5 and number 6, that these were clearly also deliberately chosen as for the peak masters of the other 3 peaks. They were evenly matched, and in the end, they completely scrambled the remaining 6 slips of paper and each randomly drew 2 of them. Take these. Chiyu handed the 2 slips of paper in his hand to Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo. Duan Ling Tian got number 5, and Huang Dinyo got number 6. What's the use of this? Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo exchanged a glance, both looking puzzled. In the 5-peak battle, for the individual matches, they will proceed in an alternating order from beginning to end. For example, number 1 and number 10 will have the first match. Number 2 and number 9 will have the second match. Shinwei explained. And so on. Number 5 and number 6 will have the 5th match. This is the first round. Duan Ling Tian suddenly understood. So, Dinyo and I will face each other in this first round. Then, as representatives of Wood Peak, we can discuss who advances first. Exactly. Shinwei nodded. No wonder the sect leader took number 1 and number 10. He had the same idea. Duan Ling Tian completely understood. Soon, the 5-peak battle began. The first match, number 1 against number 10. Golden Peak. Number 1 Nangong Chun, number 10 Nangong, number 10 Nangong E advanced. Duan Ling Tian frowned. He hadn't expected Nangong E to advance. Logically, since Nangong Chen knew I could create an illusion with my spiritual power and also knew my spiritual power level, he should have known that Nangong E was not my opponent. But why did he still let Nangong E advance? Duan Ling Tian was completely baffled by this point. Soon, after hearing Shun Wei's explanation, he suddenly realized. In the individual matches of the 5-peak battle, as it progresses, those who were eliminated earlier can challenge anyone except the person they previously conceded to or lost to. These were Shun Wei's exact words. This would continue until the final ranking. of the individual matches was determined. Therefore, Nangong Yi's advancement did not mean that Nangong Chun had no chance of reaching a high ranking. Instead, he would become a sort of trump card, helping Golden Peak reach the top at a crucial moment. For you too, I also suggest letting Denyo advance first. Duan Ling Tian, you should conserve your energy for now. Unless the 8 people from the other 4 peaks are all no match for Denyo, in which case Denyo could win first place. Otherwise, you still have a chance to surpass Denyo's ranking. Shen Wei continued. Understood. Duan Ling Tian nodded. As for Huang Denyo, there was naturally no problem that he admitted he was not as good as Duan Ling Tian. So it was better to let Duan Ling Tian rest and for him to lead the charge. Anyway, in the end, it would be Duan Ling Tian who would secure a top ranking in the individual matches. 4 would peak. After number 10 Nangong Yi advanced. Number 2 faced number 9. Number 2. Another female disciple from Water Peak. Number 9, Fire Peak, Hu Fei. Facing Hu Fei. The female disciple from Water Peak was self-aware and directly conceited. And number 9 Hu Fei advanced. The 5-peak battle continued. Number 3 faced number 8. Number 3, Earth Peak, Tianjin. Number 8. Another male disciple from Earth Peak. Tianjin conceded, just like Nangong Chun, conserving his energy to wait for the general results to come out before actively challenging others to secure a good ranking for Earth Peak. Number 8. Another male disciple from Earth Peak advanced. Number 4 faced number 7. Number 4. Another male disciple from Fire Peak. Number 7, Water Peak, Tan Huan. Number 7 Tan Huan advanced. Then it was the turn of number 5 and number 6. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo. Duan Ling Tian conceded, and Huang Denyo advanced. The results of the first round were thus revealed. Coincidentally, those who actively conceded or lost in the first round were precisely number 1 to number 5, number 6 to number 10 all advanced. They were respectively Huang Denyo, Tan Huan. Another male disciple from Earth Peak, Hu Fei, Nangong Yi. The alternating matches continued. In the first round, Huang Denyo faced Nangong Yi. The two stood in midair, facing each other. Denyo, this Nangong Yi has already broken through to the void prying stage 7th level. Even if you concede this match, no one will mock you. This was what Shen Wei said to Huang Denyo before he entered the arena. But Huang Denyo still went up without any hesitation. According to him, it was a rare opportunity to fight a void-prying stage 7th level martial artist without any life-threatening danger. And he didn't want to miss it. This Huang Denyo actually dares to fight with Senior Brother Yi. He really doesn't want to live. Senior Brother Yi is a void-prying stage 7th level expert. This Huang Denyo is said to be just a void-prying stage 5th level martial artist. I really don't know where he gets such courage to dare to fight with Senior Brother Yi. With just one move, Senior Brother Yi can certainly defeat him with ease. The group of 5-element sect disciples watching discussed animatedly. No one thought Huang Denyo could be Nangong Yi's opponent. I heard you are one of the 2 strongest among the younger generation of the 5-element sect, and your cultivation has already broken through to the void-prying stage 7th level. But I wonder, do you dare to fight me over there? Huang Denyo ignored the surrounding discussions. He looked at Nangong Yi seriously, while pointing towards the cliff on the side of Golden Peak. Hearing Huang Denyo's words, Nangong Yi raised an eyebrow and asked, "You've comprehended the Earth concept?" Clearly, he had guessed Huang Denyo's intention, which was nothing more than to use the Earth concept to borrow the power of the Earth to fight him. Yes, of course, you can refuse, Huang Denyo said. However, even if you refuse, I will still fight you, even if I know the result will be a loss. At this, the group of 5-element sect disciples watching fell silent. Evidently, they all wanted to know if Nangong Yi would agree to Huang Denyo's outrageous request. Why should I refuse? Nangong Yi smiled, answering Huang Denyo with that. As expected of Senior Brother Yi, he knows that the opponent has comprehended the Earth concept and can borrow the power of the Earth by getting close to the ground. Yet he still agreed to the opponent's unreasonable request. This is courage. Not everyone possesses it. Naturally, do you think everyone is Senior Brother Yi? Senior Brother Ego? I believe that even if the opponent borrows the power of the Earth, he still won't be your match. Senior Brother Yi, Make this Huang Dinyo lose convincingly. A group of 5-element sect disciples shouted excitedly, full of confidence in Nangong Iwush. Huang Dinyo flew out, and in a moment reached the side of the Golden Peak cliff. He slowly closed his eyes, let out a long breath. As if sensing something that a moment later, strands of solid earthy yellow power emerged from Huang Dinyo's body, then violently surged, as if resonating with the earth. At this moment, Nangong Yi appeared opposite Huang Dinyo, looking at the surging power around Huang Dinyo's body, and couldn't help but be a little surprised. It seems I still underestimated you. Nangong Yi murmured to himself, whoosh. At some point, the solid earthy yellow power around Huang Dinyo's body seemed to have completed a brand new transformation, emitting bursts of extremely terrifying aura. Immediately after, above Huang Dinyo's head in the void, a celestial phenomenon gradually condensed into shape. Illusory ancient horned dragons appeared out of thin air, vast and mighty, their numbers continuously increasing, as if endless 50 heads, 70 heads, 100 heads, still continuously increasing. Gradually, the rate of increase slowed down, finally settling their 185 illusory ancient horned dragons coiled above Huang Dinyo's head in the void. 185 pairs of sharp eyes looking down at Nangong Yi, as if they could pounce on him at any moment. How is this possible? This Huang Dinyo, he's actually so strong. The 185 illusory ancient horned dragons before their eyes greatly shocked the group of 5-element sect disciples. Watching, even Tan Huan from Water Peak and Tian Jun from Earth Peak now looked wary. Void Prying Stage 6th level mid-grade Earth concept. Plus the power of the Earth you borrowed with the Earth concept. You are qualified to fight me. Nangong Yi slowly spoke, directly revealing Huang Dinyo's true strength. Void Prying Stage 6th level, with full elemental force, is comparable to the power of 80 ancient horned dragons, 6th level mid-grade. Earth concept is comparable to the power of 70 ancient horned dragons. The power of the Earth borrowed at this level of Earth concept is the power of 35 ancient horned dragons, which is half of the power contained within the Earth concept. Adding them up, it is the power of 185 ancient horned dragons. I'm really looking forward to fighting you. Huang Dinyo took a deep breath, his gaze burning as he stared at Nangong Yi. Putting everything else aside, just your courage to allow me to use the Earth concept to borrow the power of the Earth to fight you. I, Huang Dinyo, admire you. Haha, interesting. Facing the straightforward Huang Dinyo, Nangong Yi felt a surge of goodwill. He laughed heartily, and his elemental force surged, then transformed into waves of blue ripples that swept over his entire body. This was the fusion of elemental force and the water concept. Asterisk.